The sky above Antara wasn't supposed to look like that. Red warning lights flashed across the main control room as small bits of rock began burning up in the upper sky. The colony had stood for nearly 20 years on this distant planet, home, to refugees from 12 different worlds who had nowhere else to go. Elder Keo's forearms trembled slightly as he looked at the scanner readings. The old alien's skin had once been bright blue, but years of worry had faded it to a dull grey. Around him, the other council members whispered among themselves, their different bodies and voices creating a strange mix of sounds. "Please, everyone," Keo said, raising his voice. The room fell quiet. "Our instruments show what we feared. A large asteroid field is headed directly for Antara. The first small pieces are already entering our atmosphere." The room broke into panicked voices until Keo raised all 4 hands. "We've activated our distress beacon, but—" He paused, looking down. "Our communication array was damaged in last month's storm. The signal is too weak to reach any major systems. No one will hear our call for help." In the back of the room, Nari looked up from her data pad. Unlike the other members of her species who had bright red skin, hers was a softer, pink. At just 26 cycles old, she was the youngest communications expert the colony had ever had. "How long do we have?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. 3 days before the main field hits," replied Keo. "We should begin moving everyone to the underground shelters. It's our only chance." The council members started, filing out, speaking in hushed tones about evacuation plans. But Nari didn't move. She stared at the communication array's readouts, biting her lower lip. "Nari," Keo said gently, noticing she hadn't left. "There's nothing more we can do here. The signal is too weak." "But what if we could make it stronger?" Nari asked, already walking toward the main transmitter. "What if we could boost it enough to reach beyond our normal range?" Keo sighed. "We've tried. The parts we need won't arrive for another 2 months. By then," he didn't need to finish, "by then there might not be a colony left." "I have parts," Nari said, her eyes lighting up. "From my personal devices, from the old ship components we salvaged last year. They're not exactly right, but maybe—" "Nari." Keo placed one of his hands on her shoulder. "I understand hope, but false hope is cruel. Go help with the evacuation." After Keo left, Nari stood alone in the control room. Outside the window, more bright streaks cut across the darkening sky. The first warning signs of what was coming. "Not yet," she whispered to herself. "We're not done yet." That night, while most colonists packed their most precious belongings, Nari gathered everything she could from her small living space: her music player, the parts from 3 broken data pads, and the signal booster she'd been building as a hobby. None of it was meant to work with the colony's main system, but she had to try. By morning, the control room looked like a workshop had exploded inside it. Parts and tools covered every surface. Nari hadn't slept, her eyes red-rimmed but focused, as her hands moved quickly, connecting wires and adjusting settings. "What are you doing?" asked Tay, another young colonist who had come to check on her. His green skin showed concern as he stepped carefully around the scattered parts. "Trying to save us all," Nari replied without looking up. "Hand me that connector." "The council says we should go underground," Tay said, passing her the tool. "They say it's our best chance." "Our best chance is getting help," Nari said. "If I can boost this signal enough, someone might hear us." "Who?" Tai asked. "We're too far from the trading routes. The nearest outpost is weeks away, even at top speed." Nari finally looked up at him. "I don't know, but someone is out there. I refuse to believe we're truly alone." For the next day, Nari worked without stopping. Colonists came and went, some bringing her food that went uneaten, others trying to convince her to join them in the shelters. Even Elder Keo returned, watching her work with a mixture of sadness and admiration. "The main field will hit tomorrow," he told her gently. "You've done everything you could." Nari shook her head, attaching her signal booster to the main array. It was a strange patchwork of different technologies, held together with hope as much as skill. "Just a few more adjustments," she said, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "This will work." As the sun set on what might be their last full day, Nari finally stepped back from her creation. The modified transmitter hummed with power, using energy in ways the original designers never intended. "It's ready," she said, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. With Kyo and a few others watching, she activated the emergency beacon. The lights in the control room dimmed as power flowed into the boosted transmitter. For a moment, nothing seemed different. Then the readouts changed. The signal strength jumped, pushing far beyond its normal range. It wasn't perfect. It wavered and spiked erratically, but it was traveling farther than anyone thought possible. "Now we wait," said Nari, collapsing into a chair too tired to stand any longer, "and hope someone is listening." Outside, more asteroid fragments lit up the night sky like deadly shooting stars. Time was running out, but somewhere in the vastness of space, Nari's boosted signal raced outward, carrying Antara's desperate plea for help, a message that would soon reach unexpected ears. Officer Han rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his coffee mug, finding it empty for the third time during his night shift. The communications deck of the Horizon was quiet, except for the soft hum of equipment and occasional beeps from the monitoring systems. Most of the crew was asleep, leaving Han alone with the endless stars visible through the viewport and the steady stream of background space noise that filtered through his headset. 6 more hours, he muttered to himself, checking the time. Night shifts were always the longest, especially in this empty sector where they rarely picked up anything interesting. The Horizon was 3 months into its exploratory mission, mapping uncharted regions far from the established human colonies. Han was about to get up for another coffee when something caught his attention, an unusual pattern cutting through the background noise. He sat up straight, adjusting his headset and fine-tuning the receiver. "What the hell?" he whispered, listening intently. The signal was unlike anything in their database, fragmented and distorted, but definitely artificial. Han quickly ran it through the ship's translation matrix, watching as the computer struggled to decode the unfamiliar format. After several minutes, words began appearing on his screen, broken but unmistakable. "Emergency. Asteroid collision. Colony Antara 3 days before impact. Please help." Han's hands moved quickly across his console, trying to clean up the signal and extract more information. His heart raced as he realized what he was hearing, a desperate plea from someone about to die. "Computer, locate Captain June," Han said, his voice urgent. "Captain June is in his quarters," the ship's AI responded. "This is Communications Officer Han. I need to speak with the captain immediately. Emergency situation." 10 minutes later, Captain June walked onto the bridge, his black uniform hastily put on, dark hair still slightly messy from sleep. Despite the early hour, his eyes were alert and focused. "This better be good, Han," he said, though without real anger. "What's so urgent it couldn't wait until morning?" Han gestured to his screen. "Sir, I picked up a distress signal about 30 minutes ago. It's weak and breaking up, but I've confirmed it's genuine." Captain June leaned over to look at the data. "What's the source?" "A colony called Antara. It's not in our database, sir. They're reporting an imminent asteroid collision. Based on the message, they have less than 3 days before impact." The captain's expression grew serious. "Do we have coordinates?" Han nodded. "Yes, sir. I've triangulated their position based on the signal strength and direction." He pulled up a star chart on the main screen, indicating a point far from their current location. "They're here." June studied the map, his brow furrowing. "That's extremely far off our charted course." "Yes, sir, I checked twice." June straightened up. "Wake the senior officers. Emergency meeting in 15 minutes. The Horizons Conference room quickly filled with bleary-eyed officers. Chief Engineer Tay arrived last, still wiping engine grease from his hands. Navigator Sue was already studying the coordinates Han had provided, her face showing growing concern. "I've called you. All here because we've received a distress call," Captain June began without preamble. He nodded to Han, who played the cleaned-up audio for everyone. The scratchy voice filled the room. "This is Colony Antara requesting emergency assistance. Our sensors have detected a major asteroid field on collision course. Our defenses are insufficient. Impact in approximately 3 days. If anyone receives this message, please, and we have over 400 colonists, including 60 children." The message dissolved into static, and the room fell silent. The signal is extremely weak, Han explained. They're using some kind of jury-rigged transmitter that's barely reaching us. It's amazing we picked it up at all. Do we know anything about this colony? Asked Medical Officer Jin, her long hair tied back in a practical braid. Jun shook his head. Nothing in our database. Based on the signal pattern, they're not human. First contact situation then, Security Chief Woon said, his voice gruff. Navigator. Sue cleared her throat. Sir, I've calculated the fastest route to these coordinates. She projected a course onto the main screen. Even pushing our engines to maximum, we'd need to make 3 consecutive FTL jumps through unmapped space to reach them in 3 days. Is that even possible? Jun asked. Sue hesitated. It's never been done before, sir. The calculations alone would normally take days, and the risk of jumping through unmapped regions. She didn't need to finish. Everyone knew the stories of ships that had attempted blind jumps and were never seen again. Chief Engineer Tay spoke up. The engines aren't designed for consecutive jumps without cooldown periods. We'd be pushing them well beyond safety parameters. Could it damage the ship? Jun asked directly. Damage? Sir, it could tear us apart, Tay replied. We'd be redlining the core for days. Security Chief Woon leaned forward. Captain, I need to point out, we don't know these people. We have no obligation to risk our ship and crew for an unknown alien colony that might not even be friendly. Tense silence fell over the room. Han looked around at his crewmates, seeing the conflict on their faces. They were explorers, not a rescue vessel. Their mission was to map this sector, not attempt impossible rescue operations. Captain Jun walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars for a long moment before turning back to his crew. 400 lives, he said quietly. 60 children. Does it matter what species they are? No one answered. Navigator Sue, Jun said, his voice firmer now. Begin calculations for the jump sequence immediately. Chief Tay, I need you to prepare. The engines for extended maximum output. Officer Han, try to establish two-way communication if possible. Sir, Sue protested, the risk is significant, Jun finished for her. I know, but somewhere out there, a colony is about to be destroyed, and they reached out hoping someone would hear them. He looked around the table. We heard them. What kind of humans would we be if we simply continued on our way? Something shifted in the room, a sense of purpose replacing the doubt. Then we'll do the impossible, Tay said with a determined nod. Emergency protocols are now in effect, Jun announced. We have less than 72 hours to reach Antara. Let's move. As the officers hurried to their stations, Han felt a surge of pride. This was why he'd joined the Horizon's crew, not just to explore new worlds, but to represent the best of humanity when it mattered most. Behind him, he heard Captain Jun contact the bridge. Helm, prepare for course change. We've got people to save. The engine room of the Horizon glowed an ominous red, both from the warning lights and the dangerous heat radiating from the ship's overtaxed power core. Engineer Tay had stripped down to his undershirt, sweat pouring down his face as he raced between monitoring stations. The ship shuddered around him, metal groaning under stresses it was never designed to endure. Core temperature rising past. Safety threshold, called one of his assistants, her voice tight with worry. We're redlining everything. Tay slid beneath the control panel, tools clattering around him as he worked to reroute cooling systems. Divert emergency coolant to sections 3 through 7, he shouted back, and get me those stabilizer readings. Above them, the great engines of the Horizon burned brighter than any human vessel should, pushing the ship faster than any captain would normally dare. The viewport showed streaks of light as stars blurred past at impossible speeds. On the bridge, Captain Jun gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship gave another violent shake. The crew worked frantically at their stations, faces tense with concentration. Status on the jump calculations? Jun asked, looking to Navigator Sue. She didn't look up from her screens, fingers flying across multiple interfaces. Finalizing. Coordinates for the second jump point. It's not precise, sir. We're operating on limited stellar data for this region. Do your best, Jun said simply. He knew what he was asking of his crew, what he was risking. But the alternative was to let an entire colony die without even trying to help. Communications Officer Han suddenly straightened in his chair. Captain, I'm receiving transmissions from the HSS Dauntless and HSS Pioneer. They've changed course. To join our rescue mission. A murmur of surprise ran through the bridge crew. They picked up our emergency broadcast? June asked, hope rising in his voice. Han nodded. Yes, sir. Captain Lee of the Dauntless says they can reach the jump point in 4 hours. The Pioneer is 6 hours behind them. For the first time since they'd begun this desperate race, June allowed himself a small smile. Humanity. Showing its best side today. Tell them we're grateful for the assistance. The ship lurched again, more violently this time. The lights flickered and several consoles sparked. Engine room report, June called out. Tay's voice came through, strained, but determined. We're holding, Captain, barely. But I don't know how much more these engines can take. We just need them to last long enough, Chief, June replied. First jump point in 3 minutes. All hands prepare for FTL transition. Millions of kilometers away, on the colony world of Antara, the sky had turned from peaceful blue to an ominous orange. Bright streaks cut across the clouds as more asteroid fragments entered the atmosphere, some burning up harmlessly, others striking the ground with explosive force. Inside the colony's main control center, Nari jumped as a distant boom shook the building, sending dust drifting down from the ceiling. She was alone now, the only one who had refused to join the others in the underground shelters. Warning! Impact detected in Sector 4, announced the automated system. Warning! Multiple objects entering atmosphere. Nari adjusted her headset, recalibrating the receiver for the 1,000th time. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, and her hands trembled slightly as she worked. 3 days had passed since she'd sent out their desperate plea. 3 days with no response. The door slid open behind her, and Elder Keo entered, wearing the protective gear that all colonists had been issued. Nari, he said gently, the main field will be here within hours. You must come to the shelters now. She shook her head without looking away from her screens. Someone might still answer. I need to be here if they do. Keo moved closer, his 4 arms hanging heavily at his sides. Child, I admire your hope, but hope must eventually give way to survival. The shelters will protect us from the worst of it. Will they? Nari finally turned to face him. You've seen the projections. If the main asteroids hit, the shelters might not be enough. A deep rumble shook the building again, longer this time. Through the reinforced windows, they could see a plume of smoke rising in the distance where something larger had struck. Then we face our end with dignity, Keo said, his voice steady despite his fear. Together, as a colony. Nari turned back to her console, adjusting a dial with practiced fingers. 5 more minutes, she said. Just give me 5 more minutes. Keo hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. Then you come with me regardless. As he waited, Nari continued scanning all frequencies, searching for any sign that their message had been heard. The skies grew darker outside as more debris clouded the atmosphere. Warning alarms sounded throughout the colony, their urgent wailing a constant reminder of approaching doom. 4 minutes passed, then 4.5. Keo placed a gentle hand on Nari's shoulder. It's time. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears of frustration and fear. Just as she was about to stand up, a sound cut through the static in her headset, faint but unmistakable. Nari froze, pressing the headset tighter against her ear. Wait, she whispered. Wait, I'm getting something. The sound came again, stronger this time, a voice breaking through layers of interference. Colony Antara. This is Captain June of the human vessel Horizon. Do you read us? We have received your distress call and are en route with assistance. Estimated arrival within 12 hours. Please respond if you are receiving this transmission. Nari's hands shook so badly she could barely operate the controls to respond. This is Antara. We read you, Horizon. We're still here. Keo stared at her in disbelief as tears streamed down Nari's face. Not tears of despair, but of overwhelming relief. They're coming, she said, her voice breaking. Someone heard us. The humans are coming. Outside, another asteroid struck nearby, rattling the building's foundation. But for the first time in days, the sound didn't fill them with dread. Now it was just a countdown. a race between destruction and salvation, and racing toward them. Through the void, engines burning beyond their limits, 3 human ships pushed themselves to impossible speeds, determined to arrive in time. The main shelter beneath Antara's colony center was packed with hundreds of frightened colonists. Species, of all shapes, sizes, and colors, huddled together in the dim emergency lighting. The constant vibrations from surface impacts had become so normal that few even reacted anymore when dust showered down from the ceiling. In one corner, Elder Keo and the rest of the council monitored the colony's remaining sensor feeds. The news wasn't good. The main asteroid field was less than 3 hours away, and the initial fragments had already damaged 2 of their 3 shield generators. The 3rd generator won't hold against the main field, one of the engineers reported, his scaled face grim in the blue light of the display. We should prepare for... He was cut off by a sudden alarm from the sensor station. One of the younger council members, her 4 eyes widening, called out, "Something's happening at the edge of our system." Keo moved quickly to the screen. "More asteroids?" "No," she replied, voice trembling. "Ships. 3 ships just appeared out of nowhere." Nari pushed through the crowd, her exhaustion forgotten. "Let me see." The sensor display showed 3 vessels, larger than anything in Antara's small fleet. They had appeared suddenly at the system's edge, as if they'd torn a hole in space itself. "It's them," Nari whispered. "It has to be." The colony's ancient communication system crackled to life with a voice that none of them had ever heard before. Speaking a language, their translators took a moment to process. "Colony Antara, this is Captain June of the HSS Horizon. We've arrived with the Dauntless and Pioneer. We're detecting the asteroid field on approach. Hold tight. We're coming in." The shelter erupted in confused chatter. Some colonists cowered, in fear of these unknown arrivals, while others dared to hope they might actually be saved. "We need to get to the surface," Nari insisted. "We need to see them." Keo hesitated, then nodded. "A small group only. It's still dangerous up there." 5 minutes later, Nari stood with Keo and 3 other council members at the colony's main landing pad, wearing protective suits against the deteriorating atmosphere. The sky above them was dark with dust and smoke, occasionally lit by burning fragments streaking across the sky. Then they saw them. 3 massive ships breaking through the clouds, their hulls gleaming despite the dim light. They moved with incredible precision, positioning themselves in a defensive formation above the colony. "They're so big," whispered one of the council members. "Who are these beings?" As if in answer, smaller craft began deploying from the larger ships, sleek shuttles that descended rapidly toward the colony. The first touched down on the pad just 50 meters away, its engines kicking up swirls of dust. The colonists watched in stunned silence as the shuttle's door opened and several figures emerged. They walked on 2 legs, were roughly the same height, as Nari's species, and wore fitted suits that protected them from the environment. Their faces were mostly hairless, except for the tops of their heads, with 2 eyes, small noses, and mouths that looked surprisingly similar to some of the colony's species. The lead figure removed their helmet, revealing a face with determined eyes and short black hair. This, Nari realized, must be Captain June. Behind him came others, carrying equipment and speaking rapidly to each other in their language. They moved with urgency but without panic, like people who knew exactly what needed to be done and were confident they could do it. Captain June approached the waiting colonists, a small device in his hand translating his words. "Elder Keo?" he asked, looking at the 4-armed alien. Keo stepped forward, amazement evident even on his alien features. "I'm Keo. How do you know my name?" "We've been communicating with Nari since we received your signal," June explained, then looked around until he spotted her. "You must be Nari. Your modifications to your transmitter were impressive. Our engineers want to talk to you." Nari could barely speak. You really came." "Your call reached far beyond what you imagined," June said with a small smile. "Once we heard it, there was never any question of not coming." Another human approached, carrying what looked like a compact generator. "Captain, we need to move quickly. The main field is approaching fast." June nodded. Elder Keo, we've brought shield technology that can help, but we'll need to integrate it with your remaining systems. Of course, Keo said, still seemingly in shock. But may I ask, Anne, why? Why would you risk your ships and crews for a colony you've never met, people you don't know? Around them, more shuttles were landing. Humans in various uniforms spread out across the colony, some setting up equipment while others conferred with bewildered colonists who had ventured to the surface to see their unexpected saviors. June looked at Keo directly, his expression serious. Your call reached Earth. That was enough reason for us to come. That's what humans do. A massive boom shook the ground as another fragment struck nearby, reminding them all of the imminent danger. We have work to do, June continued, all business now. We've faced asteroid threats before. We can handle this one too, but we'll need your help. As humans and colonists began working side by side, Nari found herself assisting a human engineer with connecting their advanced shield generators to Antara's power grid. The human woman worked with incredible speed, her hands sure and skilled. I never thought anyone would actually hear us, Nari admitted as they worked. The engineer smiled, without looking up from her task. Lucky for all of us that you didn't give up. 3 more hours and we wouldn't have made it in time. Above them, the human ships were already moving to intercept the approaching asteroid field, weapon systems coming online. For the first time in days, hope spread through the colony of Antara. Not just hope for survival, but wonder at their first contact with a species willing to risk everything for strangers across the stars. The sky above Antara burned. Day and night blended together as the asteroid field tore through the atmosphere, bringing constant twilight broken only by the fiery trails of falling rocks and the blinding flashes of the human ship's weapons. From the colony's main control center, Nari watched in awe as the horizon positioned itself directly in the path of an asteroid, nearly half a kilometer wide. The ship's cannons fired in perfect sequence, breaking the massive rock into fragments small enough to burn up harmlessly. They're using themselves as shields, she whispered to no one in particular. Beside her, a human technician named G looked up from the shield controls they were monitoring together. Captain June calls it putting ourselves between the danger and those who can't protect themselves. It's something of a human motto. Another impact shook the building, but the reinforced shields, now strengthened by human technology, held firm. Throughout the colony, mixed teams of humans and aliens worked in exhausting shifts, repairing damage, evacuating threatened areas, and maintaining the defense systems. In the medical center, colonists watched with wonder as human doctors treated injuries with tools and techniques they'd never seen before. In the power plant, human engineers taught local technicians how to modify their systems for greater output. By the second day, many colonists had overcome their initial fear and awe. The humans weren't gods or saviors. They were people, tired, and sometimes scared just like everyone else, but determined beyond reason. How do you keep going? Keo asked Captain June as they watched a human crew drag themselves back to their shuttle after 18 hours of continuous work, only to be replaced by an equally dedicated team. June smiled wearily, dark circles under his eyes. Stubbornness mostly. We don't like losing. The worst came during the third night. The center of the asteroid field hit with full force. The human ships took damage as they intercepted the largest threats. On the colony's outskirts, a shield generator failed, exposing an entire sector to bombardment. We've lost contact with the Eastern District, reported a panicked voice over the emergency channel. Shield Generator 5 is completely offline. In T. The control room, Nari watched the disaster unfolding on the monitors. Without hesitation, the horizon broke formation and positioned itself directly over the exposed sector, using its own hull as a shield against the incoming asteroids. They can't hold that position, G said, eyes wide. Their shields will fail. But hold they did, taking hit after hit as smaller human craft raced to evacuate the threatened area. When one of the shuttles crashed after being struck by debris, humans and colonists rushed together into the storm to rescue the crew. By dawn of the fourth day, the storm began to weaken. Gaps appeared in the clouds of dust and smoke, allowing sunlight to reach the colony's surface for the first time in days. Exhausted crews looked up in disbelief as the skies gradually cleared, revealing stars and the 3 human ships, battered, but still intact, hovering protectively overhead. "The tracking systems show the field has passed," announced Engineer Tay's tired voice over the colony-wide channel. "We made it." A cheer went up across Antara, aliens of a dozen different species, embracing each other and the humans who had fought alongside them. In that moment, all differences disappeared. They were simply people who had faced death together and won. That evening, despite exhaustion and ongoing repairs, the colony's central plaza was transformed for a celebration. Tables groaned under the weight of food from both Antaran stores and human supplies. Lights were strung between buildings, and music, a strange but somehow beautiful blend of human and alien instruments, filled the air. Elder Keo stood to address the gathered crowd, his 4 arms raised for silence. "3 days ago," he began, his voice carrying across the plaza, "we believed ourselves doomed. We were a forgotten colony on the edge of known space, facing destruction with no hope of rescue." He paused, looking around at the gathered faces, alien and human alike. Then humanity arrived like a storm themselves, unstoppable, elemental in their determination. They did not know us, they had no obligation to us, yet they came, risking their ships, their technology, and their lives. Captain June stood nearby, uncomfortable with the attention, but standing tall despite his injuries and exhaustion. "Today we do not merely celebrate survival," Keo continued. "We celebrate the beginning of a new friendship. The Council has voted unanimously to establish formal relations with Earth and the human colonies." Cheers erupted from the crowd. "And to represent us," Keo added when the noise subsided, "we have chosen someone who never lost faith that we would be heard. Someone whose determination mirrors that of our new human friends." He gestured toward Nari, who stood speechless as the crowd applauded. "Nari will serve as Antara's first ambassador to Earth." Later, as the celebration continued around them, Nari found herself sitting beside Captain June, watching humans and aliens sharing food, stories, and laughter. "What happens now?" she asked. June looked at the night sky where stars once again shone clearly. "Trade routes will be established, cultural exchanges, technology sharing, the usual diplomatic things." He smiled. "And of course, we'll help you. Build better planetary defenses." "Why did you really come?" Nari asked. The truth, June considered the question. "In our history, humans spent thousands of years separated by oceans, languages, beliefs. We fought each other constantly. But whenever disaster struck, earthquakes, floods, fires, those differences always fell away. We'd rush to help people we'd never met, people we might have called enemies the day before." He looked around at the mixed crowd. "When we reached the stars and realized how vast space is, how truly alone each colony and outpost could be, something changed in us. We decided that out here, where the universe itself is the enemy, no intelligent beings should face disaster alone." He shrugged. "So we come, every time." By the next morning, the story had already begun spreading to other colonies and outposts, through the communication channels that the humans had helped restore. It traveled from ship to ship, world to world. When all seems lost, call for humans. They will come like a force of nature, unstoppable in their determination to help, and somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, other isolated colonies heard the story and looked to the skies with new hope.